Lovely. Hi everyone, thank you for coming today. I think we've got quite a bit to cover. We do have some guests from the Department of Health and Social Care. So I think it would be a great chance for you to put your questions forward around the new visiting guidance, around testing, because we are aware of the multiple issues that people have been having recently. So I think it'll be a good chance to just have a chat about that and see what's going on with the testing spreadsheet. So if you do have any questions, please don't be shy. Let's have an open conversation. And Lucy, would you like to introduce our guests?
Yeah, hi everybody. I think Shreyan said on the WhatsApp earlier if we can all have our cameras on, it's really nice to see some faces, friendly and not so friendly. It's nice to put names to faces as well after all our passing of the rant baton over the last few days. But on that note, I'm going to hand the rant baton to Oliver Kenzie. Ollie, thank you for coming. Ollie, you're the lead for England for care home testing, are you not, in your capacity? And I'm sure that's a job you thoroughly relish right at this minute.
That's right. Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name's Ollie, and that's right. Yeah, I'm the operational care home testing lead. So I'm not clever enough to write or design any of the policies, which you have to put up with, but I operationalize all of those elements. So any questions on testing, on spreadsheets, on deliveries, all of that type of stuff, I can certainly answer and hopefully provide some rationale and explanation around what's going on. Yeah, so that's me.
Also joining us is Dan Lloyd, who we've met you before, Dan, haven't we, in various other things, also with Claire Steele. Claire's on holiday, lucky lady. But Dan, would you like to just introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do?
Yep, I'm the Dan Lloyd. I'm the intensive support lead in the Southwest, so part of the regional team, regional assurance team, and basically my role is to make sure that that the local authorities and areas and systems are giving the right support to care homes, initially through the winter plan, but now as we move on going forward, and also helping people interpret some of the guidance and also feeding back to DHSC about where things are going wrong on the ground, which we try to do as much as we can, but I'll explain a bit more in a minute.
Fab. So we've all been having various chats on the WhatsApp group, passing the rant baton along to each other. Mark Reed and I sort of generally chuck it to each other quite a lot, don't we, Mark? I think I have put a few queries to Ollie, but I think it'd be really nice to hear from you guys. You know, how are you finding this week? Dare I ask what you think of the new spreadsheet? Hands up, let's go for sort of seeing how people are this week. Or just unmute yourself and start speaking. Joe.
I'll start. So we have tried to use the new spreadsheet today. The feedback I've had is that it didn't work. And 119 told us that it wasn't actually going live until tonight, which I think someone on the WhatsApp said that as well.
Yeah.
But actually trying to input all the information took around 2 hours.
Yeah.
Whereas when we realised that it wasn't going to work, we then reverted back to the old spreadsheet, and that took half an hour. And I think there's a bit of concern as to, are we going to have to input all of this information every week?
No, so thanks for the question. First of all, I think the switch will happen digitally at some point this afternoon, this evening, and I can't be precise about a time because the team who do push all the buttons and pull all the levers behind the scenes run a series of refreshes in succession to make sure we don't break the entire system for everybody. So I'm afraid I can't be any more specific about a time, other than I would advise that you that certainly by tomorrow, the new spreadsheet, tomorrow first thing, the new spreadsheet should be the one that will be accepted onto the portal. in terms of filling in the details of that spreadsheet, you can do exactly the same as what you've done previously with the old version of the spreadsheet, which is to save a master copy and then save as or create a duplicate for each time. So hopefully that 2-hour process of pre-populating all of the information of your staff and residents into that spreadsheet, I'm aware that that takes a lot of time. However, once you've done that once, hopefully there are minimal changes that you have to make on a weekly basis to save a new version each time from that master. So yeah, please operate it exactly as the same as you would have done with previous iterations of the spreadsheet. It's worth saying that on top of that, there have been issues with the portal whole scale anyway. These are kind of isolated incidents where for some reason the multiple upload spreadsheet in its old or new format is not going through for some individuals. So the digital team are aware of this, they're looking into it, they're testing it. They've tested a number of spreadsheets sent directly to them by care homes to see if it will work, and it has worked. So the next step for them is to actually conduct a live screen share with a couple of care homes as guinea pigs, if you like, to ensure and follow steps so that we can see exactly where this issue is happening. There is some hope, though, clearly, because this comes just before we're switching over spreadsheets anyway, that tomorrow these issues that have been, these niggling issues that have been around, swirling around since the weekend, and some of you may discover that the spreadsheet tends to work if you try and submit 10 or fewer rows, and then it doesn't work as soon as you go over that number. So we're hoping that once the digital refresh happens this afternoon, evening, for that new spreadsheet, hopefully by tomorrow, that will kind of clean up any of these glitches and errors that are occurring. But we are monitoring it. I am sorry that it's causing you some pain, and I, hoped it would all go really, really smoothly. But alas, such is the way with these things. So, but appreciate the feedback, and all I can say is that we are looking into it and doing everything we can to try and track down the errors and the root causes. Does that help?
Ollie, can I ask a favour? And I am getting ahead of us because, could you let me know when you think that refresh has happened and that it's then working? Because I can then let everybody know on the WhatsApp. Sure. I know that's ahead of everyone else, but frankly, we're always ahead of everyone anyway, aren't we, in Devon? So would that be possible if you can email me? Because there's quite a few guys waiting to upload several days worth of
yeah, I appreciate that. So yes, I can do that, of course. We will send a go live email tomorrow when we've fully tested it this evening, and into the afternoon today as well. So all care homes will receive that notification hopefully by tomorrow morning. Everything's fixed, happy days, we're all on the new spreadsheet. So yeah, but I will send you a separate email as well, Lucy, so that you guys.
Great. Thank you. Mary Walker, I think you had your hand up first.
Yeah, so a couple of things. First thing is, I knew nothing of the new spreadsheet whatsoever. I've gone through all my emails. I've had nothing through other than what I saw in the WhatsApp group. So thank goodness for the WhatsApp group. That's all I can say, because I knew nothing about this new spreadsheet until it was on there last night, and then I started to panic. The other thing is, I briefly looked this morning at uploading the new spreadsheet. So what's everybody doing then? Are you going to be writing in each time you put the information on, whether it's a PCR or an LFD, or are you going to save one spreadsheet for PCRs and then another one for LFDs? What's everybody going to be doing? Or are you just going to change it every time as to, because obviously on a Tuesday,
what do you advise?
LFD and then we do the PCR. So I'm doing both obviously on a Tuesday. And the other thing is, I think everybody else has been having the same problem, but the barcodes are not working when we've been doing the LFD. So I've literally had to write those silly little things in. Why aren't the barcodes working anymore? That was so much easier. And it is a pain up the backside. It takes a lot of time.
So, Ollie, what's the advice from you guys about how to use the new spreadsheet? Let's start with that one.
Right. So the spreadsheet, as you quite rightly mentioned, can compute and upload and register and report if it's a lateral flow test, both PCR and lateral flows. You need to create a new row for each test conducted. So it is up to you whether you want to create 2 separate spreadsheets, one for PCRs and one for LFTs, or whether you want to simply go through in each case and select that as PCR and LFT. My advice would be to treat it almost exactly the same way in which you'd have done the portal previously anyway. You know, once there is one extra step of selecting whether it's a PCR or an LFT. The system itself, if you fill a barcode in and you've selected, and it's a PCR barcode, but you've selected LFT, when you go to upload the spreadsheet and you check the details at the end, the system will attempt to recognize which barcodes belong to which type of test. So if you've accidentally thrown in there what's a PCR barcode, but have selected it as an LFT and obviously tried to report a result, the system will recognize that actually that is a PCR barcode and tell you to go back and change it. So, and that's important for 2 things. One, obviously, we think that that's a much more assured way of ensuring that you don't end up reporting results for PCR tests that haven't even gone to the lab yet. The second thing is that the barcodes themselves look different. So the system can easily determine between which is PCR and which is LFT. And it's for that reason that the spare printed barcodes, which were initially issued with your first batch of lateral flow tests, have been discontinued. They were discontinued as far back as I think the end of December, those spare barcodes. That was communicated via webinars and through providers, provider calls that we hold from the department. I appreciate perhaps something a little bit more robust would have gone down better. So that's something that we can improve for next time. So that digital refresh also in terms of essentially making those old barcodes, the ones that are printed separately, no longer functioning on the upload. Again, that change happened overnight, and it was a digital thing that it wasn't flagged to me, unfortunately, that would be a knock-on effect. So again, I can only apologize that wasn't communicated in time for you to kind of make some operational changes. But as I say, we have discontinued those barcodes. You will have noticed on any recent orders that you've had for LFT that we won't have been sending the spare barcodes with the tests. The reason we discontinued the barcodes, sorry, go ahead, Lucy.
I was going to ask, does the scanner take on board the QR code, or does? Yes. Or it does, so if anybody's using the barcode scanners that's been sent out, that will take on the little QR code at the top of the
little QR stamp at the top of the LFT device itself, the plastic strip. The scanner will read that. So yeah, we again appreciate that some people got really used to using the spare printed barcodes on those reels, and that some people found them useful. We had a lot of feedback that said the opposite, that people really didn't like them and that they lost them, or that when they tried to distribute the tests to staff who were going to test at home or visitors who are going to test at home, that then actually having to divvy up barcodes as well clearly complicates the process. And from a clinical perspective, it is much better to have a test kit that's got fewer elements and more instructions than more elements and fewer instructions. So all of that combined leads to us not having the spare reel of barcodes anymore. And the end result is that you should be using the barcodes that are printed on the device itself, but they can be read using the handheld scanners provided by NHS Test and Trace.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully,
that's... No, that's fine. Thank you. Claire Thomas.
Hi, Oliver, can I ask, on the new spreadsheet, it's asking for the barcode, date and time. So will you not have to do that when you upload the spreadsheet onto the system?
Correct. Yeah. So that's, even if you don't have to use this spreadsheet to upload your LFTs. So if you've instructed all of your staff to do it at home, they can carry on doing that exactly the same. If you just want to continue using the spreadsheet just for your PCRs, that's absolutely fine. But the extra benefit is that all of the testing details of that process is now moved into the spreadsheet. So you do not have to go back at the end and get the scanner out or start typing in barcodes, start typing in dates, and all of that sort of stuff. And that reduces error and reduces glitches. So there is a pain whenever we switch, but we're confident that it will speed things up in the long run, hopefully. And all the things that you need to register or report a test are now in the spreadsheet itself. So there is a new look sort of confirmation page at the end, which will allow you to go back and change details if you want to, if you notice something's out of place. But essentially, it just presents you with all of the tests that you've registered in that one go, and you click confirm. There's no entering dates or barcodes at the end of the process. It's all done on the spreadsheet. So hopefully in the long run, that will save you time.
So jumping on that, Ollie,
yeah.
Does that mean then that if you accidentally have an extra person in there that you forgot to delete off the main spreadsheet, are you able to go back and change that on the portal rather than having to resubmit the entire spreadsheet?
Yes. So if somebody's still on there, then you can say, oh, I didn't want to register a test for John Smith or whatever. But you should. It will be quite obvious that you've done that, because you'll have to fill in a test barcode for that individual. So hopefully when you're going through, but yes, it should. And as well, we do advise that you don't try and delete rows, because the spreadsheet is locked in that sense. But if you clear all of the cells in a particular row, so you just go through and delete the contents of each row, the system will just skip it. So if John Smith is not testing on that day, you just clear his name off that version that you saved for that given day, clear that row, and the system will just skip when it reads it. So yeah, that's the easiest way to mitigate that. But yes, it will give you a chance to go back and sort of delete the contents of a test or whatever. Okay. And you can also change the result as well for an LFT. So if you are using it to register and report lateral flow tests, on that confirmation page, if you've accidentally put negative rather than positive or whatever, you can go back and change that at the end as well if you want to. So yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, we're just using it for PCR. We're getting our staff to do their upload their own LFTs and using their cameras to scan. So yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good. We just thought we might have to put the barcodes in twice, but that's good to hear. Thank you.
No, only once. Yeah.
Thanks.
A couple of comments in the chat bar. Lou, thank you for your one. Just one of the frustrations is we don't know if a glitch is ours or shared by all, and then obviously the 119 potluck syndrome, whether you get somebody that is very helpful or not. Lou's saying it would be helpful to have a website that has known problems or solutions, so we don't end up relying on our various social media links. Any thoughts on that, Ollie?
Sure. I'm currently working on some updated guidance for the spreadsheet. So obviously include all of the things on LFT, but I'm also trying to curate some kind of frequently asked page, which at least, deals with, regular glitches and problems. There's a little bit of crystal ball in that, because we haven't sent this spreadsheet out into the ether yet for it. Obviously you've all got hold of it, but you're not currently using it to register and report your results. So there is a little bit of a time lag there where we'll need to kind of review what actually people are finding are the kind of the hurdles that are being placed in by this particular version or iteration of the spreadsheet. So once we collect some of that stuff, 119, I can, I appreciate that sometimes it is a bit potluck, but I should reassure you that not only the 119 call volumes monitored by myself and my team, so if there are particular issues that are propping up, they will be categorized as care home issue with multiple uploads, and that will be sent to me in a graph. And so I know when, there are 300 or 400 calls on the same subject, or only 2 calls on the same subject. So there is a process in place for those things to be escalated to our operational and logistics team. So we do know what goes on. even if you don't quite know exactly what it is, how many other people are experiencing the same issue. So yeah, there is a process in place there for us to be able to try and iron out some of those regular cooling points and pressure points.
Sure. That's useful to know. It'd be interesting to see whether you've got a regional spike as well, because I suspect every now and then we'd get a Devon one. And then Tom Bond, you've got your hand up, I think.
I was just wondering, on the spreadsheet under occupation, it doesn't actually allow you to put a carer in.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I think care worker is an option, but
that goes on to say it's the manager, not the care worker.
Let me double check that. And to be completely honest, the occupation is not the most. I don't think that's a social worker, I think it says, and it says care manager. Yeah, I appreciate on the spreadsheet that all of the options that you'd want to see are not in there. We can try and fix that for next time. And yeah, that's, you know, I'm sorry, on the actual portal itself, it gives you slightly more options if you were to do it one by one.
That's what I've noticed, and I didn't know if it is messing up statistics somewhere, or if it's just added where if it's not needed. Why is it there?
Sure. It is there as a guide for us to sort of really track who's using which test. However, I would say that because it's really there for other organisations, not for care homes. So in essence, when you upload that spreadsheet or when you go into the portal, because you're registering on behalf of an organisation, you enter your UON and you also will select whether it's a staff or resident. So we've already captured the fact that if it's a staff spreadsheet, we've already captured the fact that you're a member of staff in a particular setting, which we know is a care home. So that's why in the instance of care homes, we already kind of capture that data. But this spreadsheet does go out to other parts and in the past has been trialed and piloted with other parts of the NHS. So that's why that occupation thing is there. It's not overly important, I'm afraid, for care homes because we capture that data anyway when you enter the UON. So hopefully that makes sense. But sorry if it gets in the way. But that's kind of why it's there. But we do capture the data, and it is important that we do that. But we've got a double chance to capture that, if you like.
Okay, thank you for that. Mandy Larkham said about her barcode scanner, which doesn't really ever worked by the sounds of it, Mandy. And a quick query about QR codes. How does that work from infection control? I don't know whether you can see the chat bar, Ollie, but
yes, I can. Yeah, so QR scanners, if you're experiencing any problems with it, let me get you the email address of the scanner company who have their own helpline, I believe. I'll put that in the chat, actually. I won't try and find it now, but I'll put it in the chat. So whoever asks that question, they can get in touch with the company directly. In terms of infection control with the QR code on the testing device, clinically this has all been signed off, so the risk is very, very minimal for contamination or spread, bearing in mind that it's 2 drops of solution into a device which yes, and as you should be cleaning surfaces and clearly using gloves and what have you when you conduct the testing anyway. So all of those risks are mitigated by that, and we're pretty confident that there isn't a clinical risk to that. I can find some lines on that if it would be helpful from our clinical leads and professionals within the department, if that would be of use.
Okay, thank you. That's really kind. Keep your questions coming. A couple of others that I added into our list this morning, Ollie, when I sent you my spiel, were around visiting. So there's obviously new guidance out again as well about visitors and how we treat them. What's your kind of thought about LFD testing, and where are we moving towards? Are we looking at evidence at point of entry that a relative has done their LFD, sort of, you know, here it is, here's my registration, or what are we asking? Because it feels like we're in a bit of transition at the moment, and we've spent a lot of time teaching our visitors how to to comply with certain guidance, and it feels like we're now moving into a new era.
No, I think the new visiting guidance, it's unfortunate if it has proved a bit confusing maybe, or if it looks like it sends the perception that this is quite a big change. But I don't think, from my perspective, I don't think that marks a kind of real step change in what we've been asking homes to do, or what we're asking visitors to do. Exactly the same as the previous guidance, it's quite clear that a named visitor will need to provide evidence or proof of a negative test for the care home staff or manager to essentially assure that they're negative, and that test needs to be conducted on the same day as the visit. And it also details in the guidance for visitors what proof looks like, which is a text or email official from NHS Test and Trace following the reporting of the result, or it can be a date stamped photo. Yeah, if someone's got one of the old-fashioned cameras or what have you, just to try and square the circle of some people who don't use the mobile phones and emails and what have you. That process is exactly the same. Our guidance suggests that the preference is still for the care home to test on site on entry, because obviously that's just better, because it will be sort of more of an assisted test. But clearly we've rolled out the new boxes of 7s to care homes with the express intention that for some care homes that will be unmanageable, and particularly with the direction of travel of allowing an expanded list of named visitors, that for lots of homes you will need to allow visitors to self-test away from the home and just bring evidence with them. So does that answer the question, Lucy? It's not really a step change in what evidence looks like or what have you. It should be exactly the same. The only really big difference is that we've increased the number of named visitors from 2 to 5. It's still only 2 visits per day maximum in the care home, that is. So again, hopefully that won't really see your testing of visitors expanded to a huge extent.
I've misread the guidance if that's the case. Are you saying per care home we should only have 2 visits per day, or is it 2 visits per resident?
Per resident per day, yeah. So each resident previously was allowed 2 named visitors. They're now allowed 5 named visitors, but we're still advising that that resident should only have 2 visits or visitors per day. So, and I think that's sensible.
Can I ask? I'm just wondering. Can I ask the sort of 40 odd on here? I'm bearing in mind, I know we've got a question from Tom and from Mary, but could you just raise your hands if you'd understood that from the guidance, or whether I misread that? Hands up if that is how you'd understood it.
Lucy, it's caused quite a bit of confusion, particularly with families. They were under the impression that suddenly 5 could rock up for a visit.
Yeah, I think there was 2 contradicting paragraphs in the guidance, where one said that the resident could have all 5 visitors at the same time if they wished, but then on the next paragraph it said only 2 visitors at a time. So I think that's where I found it confusing. Yeah,
Dan, could you feed that back maybe for us? Sure. Certainly there are a few contradictory lines in the in the guidance, and I know certainly I don't know about anybody else, but we've certainly been taking phone calls all day, every day since Monday at 8 o'clock from people. They're not being difficult, they just really just want to come in, and we're just having to work to our capacity.
Yeah,
Mark, you've got a hand up as if to jump on that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that the national guidance gets announced to us kind of by news and by media, and as care homes we get to see the guidance land Friday night to land Monday morning is just ever infuriating. Is that because we're being asked to observe this guidance at all times without any chance to implement stuff in advance, and you know, in the context of not having insurance or indemnity to be prosecuted for getting that wrong, it's horrific. Yes. I know that's not at you, Ollie, you're not the person choosing to put that guidance out at that time, but again, like Lucy, phone calls all through last week, when can we do this, when can we do this?
Yeah.
And having to break up the families of 4 that want to come back to kids, because now over 5s count towards the 5. And again, having to deal with that between 7 o'clock on Friday night and 9 o'clock Monday morning. We're quite famously busy managing care homes. It's about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Anybody else thinking about sending, we talked to this today about sending a leaflet out to our families, explaining about children in particular. I feel, sorry to talk over you, Ollie, but no. I feel a little that it's quite hard to ask a 5 or 6-year-old to not go and hug their grandfather or great-grandfather in some cases. And kind of just sort of saying to families, if you don't feel that that's a possibility for you to be able to maintain social distancing, you know, can we ask that you don't, but how do people feel about that? Because it feels awful, doesn't it, to say no, you can't hug your grandchild. Just interested in thoughts on that, really. Wade on in, come on.
Again, it's the issue of the discrimination between people that live in a care home and those that don't. Is that, you know, as working in a care home, I can come in and hug my residents if they're unhappy and upset, but the family members can't. And there's very little difference in how I live my life away from the workplace compared to the family member. And again, we spent last week telling our residents, we know we're going to get different guidance. We don't know when we're going to get it. We don't know what it's going to look like, but you are not going to be treated the same as the rest of us. It's becoming increasingly disheartening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think, Mark, I'll take this. I mean, I think it is extremely difficult. And I mean, we're all put in the same position when, you know, this is such a hot topic in the media and everything. So when it's mentioned at all by any politician, you know, around it, it's picked up, and the detail isn't there. We wouldn't have known at that time that Boris was going to say that during that conference. You know, we knew the change was coming, but we didn't know that he was going to say that at that point. That, unfortunately, is just one of the things that happens, and we do understand the difficulty around that. We are looking around the guidance coming out on a Friday night. Everybody knows that. I mean, some guidance came out on a Monday this week for a change, but usually it is a Friday, and it is. The number of times we say that is impossible for people to deal with is difficult, but it just keeps happening, and we keep taking that back. So it is really difficult. But one of the things that is really important in this, and I don't think it comes across in the guidance and everything, is that care homes are such more high risk setting than the in the general public at the moment, you know, with regards to the people that live there, the needs of people. So the rules do have to be, at the moment, slightly different. Now, they are trying to get a roadmap so that people know. That would be the ideal thing, that you would know and have a roadmap for care homes, in a sense, so you know when these changes are going to come into place. You know, that's what we keep feeding back as well. But they are higher risk, and they are going to be slightly different. And we do know that is going to have an effect on people living within care homes. But we've got to work with the clinical advice that is coming out from our professionals in Public Health England. And, you know, nobody wants to deliberately exclude care home residents from normal life, if at all possible. But also nobody wants to put them at risk. So there are going to be.
That's a fair point, Dan. But I think, you know, my husband works for the BBC, so sometimes I end up seeing embargoed news, you know, press releases well ahead of the fact when the guidance comes. And I think we should feed it back again, that it's not fair that journalists get to hear about it before we do, because we're the ones having to safely affect it. I'm just aware that we've got a few hands waiting. Emma, sorry to keep you waiting. Would you mind?
That's all right. I just wanted to point out that, you know, we all know care homes are high risk, because do you know what? We've done 15 months of this at the coalface every day. And there's not one of us stood in this group that would put our residents at risk. But actually, having the guidance ahead of a a relative ringing you at 7:10 in the morning would be such an advantage. You know, and the LFT issue with allowing people to swab at home is great news on the guidance for the families, but the second line clearly says care homes should do it there. So should there be an issue in the care home from someone who'd LFT'd and lied, or not LFT properly, I just feel that we're in for a beating again.
Emma, you're exactly right. You are the experts, and that's why the guidance is written in such a way that you can make decisions and risk assessments around things. So, for example, when you have visitors coming into the home, and I speak to lots of providers, I used to be a provider. I've been in care homes in the middle of outbreaks in my last role at CQC. So I do appreciate what you're going through on a daily basis, and I totally understand the frustrations around that. What a lot of care homes do, and I'm sure this seems to be a sensible approach with me, is that when people first start coming into the care homes, they get them to do the tests in the service to see that they're capable of doing it, because the number of times people have told me they've just taken the swab and used it as a toothbrush almost to swab their mouth as opposed to doing it properly. When you're confident and able, and somebody's on a regular thing, then that is, I'm sure that is enough assurance for you to think they are able to do that on their own. They're bringing you proof, a level of proof. Then, you know, I think, you know, there's many care homes will say that is fine, as long as that, if there's doubts about whether a person can take their test properly, they're not sure about doing it, they would rather you did it in the home, then I think that's best to do it at the home. The guidance says preferentially, it is preferential to have it done in the home, but it does understand that for some people that will be a real pain, because they're, you know, they could be a teacher, for example, who's doing it every you know, has already done it that day. You know, they're completely confident they're coming in to visit their father. Why do they need to do it again? And it saves you that argument.
I think, to be fair, quite a lot of us, yeah, and I think a lot of us have talked quite at length on the WhatsApp group about sort of doing that kind of supervisory introductory meeting. Some of us have written sort of almost supervisions for each relative, which is patronising but useful. Mary, do you have a hand up?
Yes, so just a couple of things. I've got a relative that obviously phoned on Monday morning saying now the resident can now go into the home, go into their house rather than just sitting in the garden, because obviously that's what we can all do. And it was like, no, it doesn't say that in the guidance. They're allowed to go in the garden. They're really, really stroppy about it, because they're saying, right, well, she only wants to come home to go to the house. She doesn't want to just sit in the garden. Obviously, that causes conflict between the resident, us and them. So I don't know, you know, when that's going to be changing, that the residents can actually go into the houses. And the other thing is, what are people doing with regards to testing of the residents? So this particular resident, I LFT test her before she goes out for a walk with her family. And obviously they are tested as well, the mum and the dad. But I've also been putting her on our PCR testing, because I don't know whether she's wearing her mask when she leaves here, when she's with her parents. So what's everybody else doing about that? How are they testing and making sure that, you know, the residents are okay to go out with family members? I'm doing it to double check that, you know, she is okay.
Any thoughts on that, people? Ollie, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I mean, I completely appreciate the challenges. It's not the first time I've heard it. I mean, in terms of the releasing of the guidance on a Friday evening, I can basically, you know, just reiterate what Daniel's already said, which is that I completely appreciate that that is the worst way in which you would ever choose to communicate anything in an ideal world. And I'm just trying to do everything that I can to feed back and take the strength of feeling in meetings such as this to the relevant policy teams, so that this is a kind of blip where we're releasing stuff in a bad way, rather than a trend which becomes part of, well, this is just how we conduct business normally. You know, so that's that's all I can say in terms of that, is that that's what I'm trying to do, and trying to bring that strength of feeling and energy that you all have to those relevant individuals and teams. In terms of the changes in the roadmap, again, there's another roadmap, update the 21st of June. We're trying to align care home guidance and updates on things like visiting and visits indoors, outdoors, in line with the rest of those changes. And so, again, that's being worked on by the relevant policy teams. And I just think, the thing that I'm picking up is that the challenge has really shifted here, hasn't it? Because when prevalence is very high and we're all in lockdown, the stress is about prevalence and about the disease. But in terms of operating your homes and operating around coronavirus, it's relatively simple, right? Because you don't leave and you don't come in. So this has shifted the challenge for homes in a quite significant way, away from potentially worrying about infection, although obviously clearly that's still at the forefront of lots of clinical and policy leads' minds. But also it's switched for you guys. The stress point is in a different place, where how do we kind of unlock and match care homes unlocking at the same rate or same time as the rest of the public, whilst maintaining a sense of kind of security around infection and around the virus. And so that
and I think the main thing to say back to you on that, Ollie, is the infection control grants. We don't know that there'll be a third grant, but we've said several times to the powers that be, and it feels to me that you might be one of the people that can actually affect this, is that it's costing us a lot of money in staffing alone to enact the visiting and the testing protocols. Just the testing alone of staffing is costing all of us a lot of money. We're happy to do it, but it takes a lot of time. And here at Castle Grove, we've luckily been able to employ somebody to be a visit coordinator, but I don't know how long we can fund that for. So if you can keep banging on the door to the powers that be, that it's costing us money. It's not just costing us sweat and tears, it's costing us a lot of money. And there are homes in Devon that are closing because they can't cope with that anymore. And I know that that's a nationwide issue too, but I'm talking Devon. Sorry to move on, but Jessie, you forgot your hand up. Would you mind giving us your question?
Are you all right? Yeah, so it's really just, I think, was it Emma that was talking about service users going out for a walk with families and the testing? And just, I think, particularly in learning disability services for younger adults who are basically fit and healthy, I think we are all facing those dilemmas at the moment, and just wanted to say that we are doing much the same thing. We're LFD testing the families and the resident on the day of visits. We're putting them on our regular PCR weekly testing schedule because we have to allow some normal life. We're talking about active 20-year-old adults who happen to have a learning disability, and we just can't keep them cooped up forever. It's just not possible. So really, just to say, I've done a full risk assessment. All of the residents have had two doses of vaccines. All of our staff have had 2 doses of vaccines. The families are all a little bit older and have all had at least 1 dose of vaccine. So the question comes, where that balance is, and we are doing the same thing, because ultimately, who are we protecting by not allowing some form of normal life when our residents have all had the 2 doses?
Yeah, no, I really, really good and useful feedback, that, Jessie, as well, like all of the things that we've heard. I think that speaks to that challenge that I was just talking about. And there's an essence here where actually the guidance, or what the policy or the guidance changes, is a little bit playing catch up with what you in care homes are actually having to deliver, because you have to change it to meet the needs of your residents as their demands and change, and the picture in front of you changes. So definitely there's a sense of playing catch up there, which speaks to that challenge of that I just described, of how do we continually make changes in line with actually what's a quite quick turnaround, really, of kind of 4 weeks between each step of the lockdown. But yeah, and
really for me, my point was, I could tell from, I think it was Emma that spoke before, there is some anxiety for us in the care homes doing those things as well. And just really to say that we are all facing those same dilemmas and having to make, you know, judgment calls based on the risk assessment for our individual people that we look after.
Yeah.
Just to echo what Jessie said, exact same position, different client group, but we took the same approach. I actually got hold of the Southwest IPC team and got a same day response from a doctor who supported those exact proposals as Jessie's described, is that if you put the named visitor into the position of treating them like a staff member, testing them, looking for vaccination evidence, that a risk assessment is very supportable for those things to happen.
Thank you. That's really useful. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Good tip. Mark, would you mind putting that on the WhatsApp as well at some point, just because it'd be useful to have it written down somewhere? Okay. Thank you. Joe.
Yes, no, just echoing what Mary and Jessie have said as well. I think going forward, it would be helpful to have some guidance on residents going out and how we're supposed to, you know, because they're going out, we're not monitoring. They could be at risk of infection. So I think it's only right that they are tested as well when they come back, at least for the week or so, or 2 weeks after they go on that trip, or on a regular basis, because it's no different really to all of our staff going out and living their lives. If things are opening up, it would be helpful, instead of all of us sort of doing our own thing and sort of doing a bit of guesswork as to what is the right thing, it would probably be helpful to have some guidance on, should we be putting residents on a testing regime that are going out? I, for one, I am doing that, so.
And I mean, that's part of your risk assessment, to be honest. Do you know what I mean? And that's a sensible thing to do. It talks about risk assessment in the guidance, and I completely agree with everything Jessie and Emma and Mark have said about using risk assessments to allow people to be able to, have some kind of life as it goes on. Because obviously, I mean, the whole reason, I get questioned a lot on the fact that what was the first place that opened up after the lockdown, and people will say to me, is the most vulnerable place, which is the care homes when they allowed visiting, which opened before shops and for those sorts of things. And that often comes back to me from providers, but it's getting that balance right between the rights of individuals and their human rights to be able to visit people, and the balance of that risk. So that's almost like quite contrary to at the moment we're behind in care homes. But if you think at the beginning, there was one step where care homes were ahead of a lot of the rest of society. So it is about that balance and the difficulty of it. And you're all so good at making those everyday decisions that take into account your service user group, your homes. Relatives and visiting is beyond tricky at the moment, but it's always been quite a tricky thing to manage for a care home manager in the past. Nowhere near what it is now, but I'm sure you've all had issues with relatives in the past and things around that. And
there's a loophole in all of this that has just been stated to me privately, and it is that if a resident goes out, it throws the 5 contacts thing straight out the window, because you could have a resident go straight into someone's garden and have a parade of 25 relatives who've missed seeing them, to be fair, who haven't seen them for a year, and they want to see them and what have you. And whether or not they come in contact with that is, we don't know what happens, but it then throws that 5 contacts that is so carefully managed by us. And policed, actually, is probably the word, which is
I do understand what you're saying, Lucy, and it's about trust, isn't it? It's about informing your relatives, and they know, and people make decisions. And it is difficult to the fact that yes, they could take their relative out, and they could go, I don't know, to the pub and the bookmakers and goodness knows where before they come back. But there has to be a responsibility for that person while they're out with the relative as well. I know it's the care home as well, but you can't do that, and you've got to think about if you feel that is happening, then obviously you've got a responsibility to know that. But you also do not know what your staff are doing outside of work. You don't know whether they're going off to raves in the Forest of Dean or whatever on a weekend and things like that, but you trust them. I think it's really difficult, and it puts everybody in a difficult position, which is where the risk assessments and things like that come in to play. But people will make their own decisions, and it is hard, but also, yeah, it's difficult. There isn't an answer to that other than policing it with the fact that you sent a staff member out with them the whole time, and that's just such an infringement.
I'm aware of time. We've got 9 minutes left. I would urge anybody else to put their hands up if they'd like to have a question. One thing that's come up a few times over the last week, and I'm hoping both you and Ollie can answer this. In the guidance for the visitors, it's a little bit vague about whether or not visitors do actually need to wear PPE. It does say they need to wear a mask, but actually the apron and gloves is subject to interpretation. And that was further then compounded by the webinar earlier this week held by PHE, who specifically said that hand washing is actually okay and preferable to wearing gloves. I know some homes in Devon have taken that decision to allow hand holding and have almost have done a supervisory role on the hand washing part of it. I'd like to ask people what their thoughts are on that and whether we are moving towards taking away aprons and gloves, and also what you both feel, but particularly you, Dan, I suppose it's not really a testing thing, is it, Ollie, about gloves and aprons for visitors.
Lucy, can I just tell you what we think? So we've had a long talk about this as a group, and if you read the new PPE guidance that came out, it clearly states that aprons are there to protect yourself from being splashed from body fluids. I've never understood the point of making a relative wear an apron when, if COVID was coming in on their clothes, which now we know is debatable, it wasn't coming in on their trousers or on their shoulders or on their arms or in their hair or on their shoes. You know, it is a bit of a farce, and it's almost like a bit of government spin to keep people happy that they're being looked after and being protected from something. And the same with gloves, really, because I did right back at the beginning when we started having some professionals come in, I had a bit of a standoff with the local professionals coming in because the physios and OTs have been told they didn't need to wear gloves. And we were quite clear that they did need to wear gloves. So we had a bit of a fight about that, and they did wear gloves because that's what I told them they had to do to come in. However, I don't see the benefit if our families are washing their hands and only sitting with their resident. I don't understand why they need to wear bright blue gloves.
Yeah, but Emma, the guidance on this is they should wear appropriate PPE.
It says they have to. What it said was they had to wear a mask, and the care home may provide
appropriate PPE,
aprons and gloves. It may.
Yeah, where appropriate, and I think it didn't come across well in the webinar. Okay, it didn't. But sometimes when you get visitors coming into the home whilst they're with their resident, they may assist them with something that is personal care, and at that point. Because some will, Emma, some will. I know it's not always, but they will to a degree. I think we've all seen it in homes that some people may do that, and if that's the case, they're going to do that. They should wear that. What they were trying to say in the webinar yesterday is that a mask is sufficient unless there's extra risks around it. So if somebody who coughs a lot in general, they might want to put an apron on, but hand washing and those things is sufficient around that. It's about the appropriateness of the task they will be doing with that person. Also, they may be visiting an individual who finds social distancing or that kind of thing extremely difficult to manage and would be close to them at all times. And it may be appropriate at that time that you say that the person has an apron on, but it's up to you in your risk assessment around that. The most important thing, as you say, is the mask and that respiratory contact, the protection around that. Good hand washing around that is not necessary. It is, I do understand the guidance should be a lot clearer. And I think, you know, there were some elements of the webinar that explained it well on Tuesday, and there was other bits that didn't, unfortunately, went off track a bit.
Can I just add into that when our family members take our relatives out,
yeah,
they don't wear gloves, they don't wear aprons, yet they could be over in the park hugging and kissing them. Yes, I stipulate that they wear a mask, but they don't wear gloves and aprons when they're walking around with them, do they? So,
well, on
the
guidance yesterday, on the webinar yesterday, it stated if somebody does go out with a service user into the open air and they're staying 2 meters away, they don't need to wear a mask because they're outside, just the same as everybody else.
We don't know that they're staying 2 meters away, though, do we? Because we're not there. We're not actually watching them when they're going out the gate, over to the road, into the park.
But I think it's your responsibility to remind them that that's what they should be doing. We can't stop them from doing that, and it will happen. But what do you want to do? The alternative is not to allow visiting, not to allow people to go out, and
I
to
know,
allow
but if we
people
get
to stay
COVID
there.
into our homes, the fingers gets points at us. And yet, you know, at the end of the day, we don't know what they are doing.
You can, Mary, you
This
can
is doing
only,
my blood pressure.
yeah, but you can only do what you can do. You know, around that. If you know, I mean, that is the challenge around it and the balance around it. But one of the things that you have to remember at the moment in our area and in Devon particularly, we're very low COVID rates at the moment. The risk at the minute is far less, but it is that balance between, and it's a tricky balance. And yes, we don't know what goes on when residents are taken out of the home, but is that a risk worth taking for the residents? You know, or do we stop that altogether? It is tricky. It is tricky.
So there's queries around insurance. I know we're running out of time slightly, but we've obviously had a lot of chat about insurance sort of in the various other fora that we sit on. Robin or Jeffrey or Marcus might want to jump in on this. Do you want to just put some of the insurance issues that we've had to Dan and or Oliver, just so they're aware?
Firstly, apologies, Robin. I haven't got back to you, and I'm meaning to ring you about that. So, he's on the line.
He should be around. It's basically insurance concerns that when none of us are covered for COVID anyway, and particularly if we don't adopt various bits of guidance, we're certainly not covered.
And on the insurance, Lucy, I'll run through what I know because the game is changing all the time. So we know that a large number of insurers have withdrawn from the market in total. We know that COVID cover was specifically withdrawn from renewals as from last April, May. That's now extended, so any other types of liability associated to infectious disease have been withdrawn progressively. Insurers are, even insurers with providers in general, are unlikely to offer to renew an insurance for any provider whose home or homes have fallen into requiring improvement. So that means only in homes that are good or outstanding can get insurance at all, as a general rule. Premiums have been, apart from those where in cover has been declined altogether, the general increase in premiums been roughly between 20 and 100%, in some cases 800%, which would probably make the operator completely unviable. So there is some indication that there is a new insurer who's come to the market to add to the very low stock of insurers who are willing to provide cover, but there are apparently big question marks as to the reliability or integrity of that particular insurer, even though they have been trying to clean up, take advantage and offer more attractive cover at lower premiums. So there is a word of real caution about some entrance to the market, of which there's only one at the moment that I know of. That's all I know.
Jeffrey. Well done.
Jeffrey, no, that's really, really useful. I sent a report up this week after speaking to 5 different providers in the South West who all had similar examples to you around that, you know, all illustrated those situations. around everything like that, and we're doing that nationally to send back, well, sending it to the policy teams around that to give them real examples of where, and you're exactly what you're saying is exactly what I found between 15 and 100% on renewals. No chance of getting a new contract with a new insurance with any other provider other than a renewal, really.
Sally, you want to comment on this? You've got your hand up.
Yeah, it's only that I'm going through renewing my insurance at the moment, and speaking to my broker yesterday, we are through New India, we are actually covered through the employer's liability, and they are starting now to see claims from staff against COVID. So that's going to be a big issue as well, because obviously once it gets around, you can claim against COVID. How many more people are going to start to do that?
Yeah, no, that's thanks for letting me know about that, Sally. And I know that the New India company actually keeps coming up to me as one of the better ones that providers are saying. It's one of the few ones that's offering, well, not good terms, but better than the majority of the others. But yeah, they're doing that, and there is a lot of work going on around this at the moment, and I do appreciate it's a huge problem and a huge worry for providers, and we are stressing it. I mean, I think it's important to say is in my role, it might sound at the moment that I'm defending DHSC, I suppose, a bit, but actually my role is to get your message across to people, and me and Claire spend literally 5 days a week trying to explain to people what things mean in the sector and what it does, and we are beginning to be listened to. I mean, on certain things and around certain areas, and we try, because at the end of the day, all of my team or our team have worked in the sector. We know about working in care homes. We know about doing this, and you know, we know about the pressures on services and what these things do, and we are trying to get that across as much as possible. But also, I think it's important for the sector that they do recognise that they are the subject experts, and you are the subject experts. You are the people that have been doing it for so long, and the insurance issue is huge, and we are taking it back as best as we can, because it does make that difficult when you think about risk assessments and everything like that. And Marcus, I'd love to insure you all, but I can't. But yeah, though we just keep hammering that message that it's a huge problem. They wanted specific examples, and we've given them loads now. So hopefully that might help.
I'm very aware of time, and I'm sorry to keep you. I just caught Peter Gaffney yawning, and so don't blame me, Peter. So I just wonder. I think probably final word maybe to you, Ollie, because I know you were working very hard. When I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the PCR and LFD joint upload spreadsheet, and we are now speaking to you on the day that is launched. So good luck. I wonder whether you might want to come back in a couple of weeks' time, maybe, and we'll have a conversation to see how that went, and whether we can feed any more back to you, and maybe sort of Mark and I might keep our rant batons to ourselves. I don't know. He's not shaking.
I'm very happy to come back in a couple of weeks. We'll see. I don't know. Who knows what the diary will be doing in 2 weeks, but certainly if I'm available, I will come along.
Does it feel like that this is it for the moment for testing? You know, is this you've been working a long time on this spreadsheet? Are we due any other surprises, do you think?
I hope not. I don't think so for the time being. This is a change which, you know, put it this way, we're not gonna unless there's serious issues and problems with this version, then we won't. I certainly won't be promoting changing it anytime soon. We've implemented the changes that we wanted to do based on the feedback that we were given, which is if we're actually doing twice as many LFTs on staff than we are PCRs. And if we're doing those in the care home, then we should have a multiple registration option for those tests as well. We've obviously at the same time put in improvements so you can put all the details into the spreadsheet in one go, as we discussed earlier, so there's no going back at the end. So I can't really see where else the spreadsheet will go. I appreciate it can be improved in terms of copy and paste. I appreciate in terms of formatting, it's still clunky, it's still glitchy, it's a spreadsheet. But I don't intend to release another version of a spreadsheet. What I would rather do is work towards a slightly more fundamental overhaul of registering tests, which might actually prove a little bit easier long term as we try and business as usual testing at some point within the NHS and further afield. So that's basically my answer to that question is no, there shouldn't be any other testing related surprises coming down the line. If there are, I will try and tell you as soon as I can. And
we're happy to pass that on. That, thank you. Lovely. Well, maybe we can see you in June. We won't make you do the whole hour, maybe, but
no, that's fine. I'm very happy to come, and it's as I said before, it's exceptionally useful feedback for us, and it's an important part of my role that I actually speak to you guys, and you know I can get a sense of the room and a sense of the things which you're struggling with, a sense of the things that are going well, and also the strength of feeling around certain areas. And as I said before, all I can do is try and replicate that in the various groups and teams that I go and speak to within government and within Test and Trace. So no, very happy to come again if and when it pops up. So yeah, keep in touch, Lucy.
Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you all for your comments and things, and also your contributions on WhatsApp. And I think my internet thing is now unstable, so Joe, you may want to take over for me at this point to close the meeting, because I feel like I might be frozen.
That's all right. Yeah, just to echo that, thank you everyone for coming. I think that was a really useful meeting. We'll see what happens in the next few weeks, and we'll be sending out the details for the next sharing best practice in June, which I don't know the date off the top of my head, I'm afraid. But we'll be sending that out. And again, you know, if you've got any suggestions on subjects, anything that you really want us to cover, please let us know. If you can email the info at Devon Care Homes email, if Izzy can put that on the chat bar, that'd be great. And yeah, good luck with the testing sheet. So see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.